Hey everyone, it's Ken. Um, so I wanted to talk about, encryption and writing and so forth, and just how we can save our own data quickly. Um, I'm in my 60s now. When I first started writing or learning how to write in elementary school, we had to do it our entire life and writing and so forth using a pen and paper. Um, So, growing up with that, you really didn't pay much attention until you realize that, some people um, were watching you or would read what you're writing and so forth. And they kind of realized that people were taking that and taking advantage of it at times. You'd write some idea that you'd want to give your teacher or to your boss, and then somebody would come up with it first. Um, so then I kind of thought to myself, there has to be a way to stop people from doing this. So, so this is more for people who write with pen and paper. Your journals, your dream. Um, in your meeting and you're writing notes, and you don't want people to know what notes you're writing down. Because obviously with computers, we can encrypt as we type. As they'll say, it's encrypted as we're typing in normal language. Then when you close it, it's encrypted. Um, so this is kind of a way for you to do it without needing encryption software. This is just you. Um, so, if we go to my other screen here, we can look at how this works. So I have here, I hate my boss. Um, so, obviously, if I'm in a meeting and I write that down and, it kind of somebody sees it, then it'd be quite easy for him to go out and put that down or tell my boss that's what I wrote. And then, of course, they would see it. So one of the quick ways is to do it this way. Um, so what you're doing here, you're taking the one and you're moving all your letters one letter to the right. So you have the I that moves to the J, the H to the I, and so on and so forth. So what you're basically doing is creating your own encryption of everything you're writing. And that way you can write things in meetings and whatnot, and nobody will know what you're in the world you're writing. Um, Me being a software engineer all my life, or a lot of my life, and working with computers, this I've used this before. I realized early in my early 20s that people were watching me or reading what I was putting in paper, so I learned how to do this. I haven't used it all my life. I only used it, earlier or just when I needed it or when I felt I needed it. But this is the way I solve that problem. How do I encrypt my files or write them so I know what they mean, but people won't? Now, again, as you see people tell you, or even as I look at it, it's pretty simple. If anybody half decently wanted to encrypt it, that's a pretty simple thing to do with this. So you can go two steps more and just post this. So now we have, um, I've moved them 3 letters over. So, and this is actually an L. Let me just change this into an L. Here, I just made a mistake. I'm not putting into L, whichever one. Anyway, so what I'm doing is I'm moving it 3 letters over. And it makes it more complicated for people to see that because now they have to figure out, okay, how many are you over? It takes them more time to figure it out. And through human nature, we all know that if you come up to something that's not readable, chances are you're just going to shake your head and walk away. We tend to have this mentality of we want to see it right away and we don't want to have to work to know what it is. Unless it's your job to do this, most people just look at it and say, I have no idea what it means, so I'll just walk away. And this is one reason why I always tell people use this kind of encryption, because then people won't usually work at it. Now, even though now that you've kind of, enjoy this or whatnot, and you've figured out that you can mess with people's heads, like I said, being a software engineer, I like to play with this stuff because I enjoy messing with people's heads. Um, Another thing you can do now is if you do it this way, you can turn it into computer language. So computer language basically is ones and zeros, and I've I've assigned the letters or numbers to letters in the alphabet. So the I is the eighth letter over. The H is the seventh letter over. The A is the first, then you have the T, which is the 20th, and then 5 is the E. So, again, kind of easy to interpret it, but most people look at it and just think it really means nothing. It's not even a sentence. They just think it's some kind of computer code. But if you really want to play fun with people, or if you really want to have a personal one, what you do is this. Let me paste this. Use symbols. What you have here is I have assigned a specific character to a symbol that I know. There is no set symbol per letter. You can just make a list and you can look at them all and you can say, okay, I want the I to be this one, I want the A to be this one, and what you have now is a very extremely personalized way of encrypting your writing. Here I can figure out exactly what you're writing, what you've written, because it's a set value. This is a set value. By computer, it is a set value. But this one here is because I've assigned certain things to a specific letter. Nobody knows what my choice is. So you'd have to sit here and try to figure out and go through all of these symbols that I have used or created, because you can create your own symbols. But you can also use French symbols or other word symbols or other languages symbols. It's a unique way of saying this is my language, and you're going to have to try really, really hard to figure out what my language is. And to be honest, there's a lot of encrypted software, encrypted words out there that, you've heard of some, encryption specialists have spent years and years and years trying to figure out what that code is. And this is what they basically do, is they just make their own code using symbols and whatnot so that they're not associated in a very specific way. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this. It's was my way of making sure people didn't know what I was writing, so I can keep it myself, and I hope people start using this because it'll stop people from reading your journals, or perhaps if you're a young kid who doesn't want their parents to know what they're doing. But specifically for adults, who write notes in meetings and so on and so forth, or even bosses who don't want other people to know what they're thinking about. Take care, everyone, and have fun with this. Bye.